Hello, everyone. My name is Michaela Madrid. I'm an enrolled member of the Lower Brule Lakota Sioux Tribe, and I'm also the operations manager for Sovereign Bodies Institute. We're doing a series of events for Trafficking Awareness Month. So this meeting here today is part of our Meet the Survivors series. So today we're really honored to have one of our very own survivor leaders, Chelsea Hendrickson, on to talk a little bit about her experiences and also to give you some insight on how she's done her healing work and how she kind of lives day by day. So this is a Q&A event. If you have any questions, please post them in the Facebook live stream chat. And towards the end of the live stream here today, we'll have an opportunity to answer some of those questions. So with that, I'd like to welcome Chelsea to turn her screen on and share with us her story.
Dos, nanana, na hase hise, na anagach, hanana e nina, na chupich. Hello, my relatives. My name is Chelsea Hendrickson. I'm an enrolled member of the Northern Arapaho Tribe from the Wind River Reservation in Ipati, Wyoming. And I'm also Chupich from Nunivak Island, and I'm also a Chalista Corporation shareholder. I currently work full-time for the Pathways to Healing program, and that is a tribal domestic violence sexual assault program within the Cowlitz Indian tribe in Tukwila, Washington. I also have a second job. I'm a youth advocate at Labatia Youth Home in Seattle, Washington, and that's with United Indians of All Tribes Foundation. And also, more recently, last March, I was on Sovereign Bodies Institute was having, I think it was like an online virtual like support group, MMIW family member support group. I logged in, Anita was on there, shout out Anita. And we were actually on there together, and we were just having conversations about the virtual support group and about ourselves. And in that moment, I felt comfortable enough to come to let Anita know that I was a survivor of sex trafficking. And within that, she invited me to join the Survivors Leadership Council within the Sovereign Bodies Institute. And so for the last 9 months, I've this is the first time that I've come out about it, about my experience of being trafficked for sex. And it's been a crazy roller coaster, you know what I mean? Being on this council has been so empowering to me. Being within a group of 9 other brave, beautiful, strong, courageous Indigenous women, all gathering together to support and uplift each other, to raise awareness about human trafficking in Indian country. And to me, this is like, for me, it's groundbreaking because I've never seen Indigenous survivors really come out and so publicly like this. Like, there's survivors in our communities. You see, we have online support groups, but for Sovereign Bodies Institute to gather us together, to uplift us, and now kind of like start a social media or like a social media campaign in Indian country to raise awareness and uplift survivor voices. So she invited me to join the Survivors Leadership Council, and that has been a huge, huge step for me in the context of everything. A year ago, I could not literally sit here in front of family, friends, anybody in my community, let alone get on a webinar and sit there and be like, yes, I'm a Indigenous survivor of sex trafficking. I probably could, even like a year ago, I couldn't really say those words, but being around these other brave women, having mentors in my community to look up to support me, to help, guide me along on this path, on this journey that I'm on, to not only change the narrative when we're talking about Indigenous survivors of sex trafficking, but also to take my power back. I'm going to tell this story and I'm going to take my power back, because for 12 years, after having this experience for 12 years, I've been living with a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of pain. And, being a part of this council gives me so much hope and so much faith in not only for my own journey, but for these changes that we need to happen in Indian country. So you really can't talk about human trafficking without talking about domestic violence, without talking about sexual assault, without talking about the intersectionalities of land and body and pipelines and water and man camps. You know, all these things are so intertwined and so interconnected. You know, I think about my journey and you know, what led me up to falling victim at 19 years old, to being sold for sex on Backpage.com. You know, I'm very thankful to be here today. So I just want to say, you know, thank you once again for Sovereign Bodies Institute for inviting me. So if you guys caught my last webinar that I did a few days ago, you know, you might get a little bit of, you might already know a little bit about my story and who I am. So I told you who I am, what tribes I, you know, work for, what jobs I hold, and you know, me starting this, I'm real fresh. I'm only 9 months into this journey of coming out as a survivor of sex trafficking. And each time I come on the webinar, each time I talk about it, each time I have a meeting with the Survivors Leadership Council, we have virtual meetings now, I get that much more empowered. I get that much more confident about knowing that this is the right decision for me to make. You know, I doubted myself for a really long time, like, is this the right move for me to make? Do I want to be public with being a Native survivor? Do I want to come out to Indian country, to the world with my story? And the more I've prayed on it, I know that the Creator has me on this path for a reason. If anything, to serve a purpose of raising awareness and making sure that the people immediately around me, like my little 9-year-old niece, never have to experience what I went through. With that being said, I'll give you guys a little part of my story about how it happened. Like I said, if you caught the last webinar, you might have already caught this story already. But I want to let people know, like, I want to tell you this story right now, because when you think of just survivors of sex trafficking, media really gives, you get a lot of stereotypes and you get a lot of myths. So even now when you see stuff being posters or stuff online being shared, talking about human trafficking or talking about sex trafficking, you're seeing like a little girl chained up in handcuffs or somebody chained to a fence. And like, you get a very one-minded kind of narrow view of what trafficking look like. How does this happen? Or like, you think a girl is walking down the street, the white van just pulls up to her, snatches her, puts a hood over her head and takes off. I mean, yeah, I feel like there's some instances where that does happen, but I feel like majority of the time, from my experience, it's become normalized in America for young women to be not only looked at as hypersexualized objects, but you know, objects that are it's normalized to, you know, the abuse that happens is now become normalized in the context of domestic violence, molestation, you know, childhood sexual assault, and human trafficking, sex trafficking, you know, really, I feel like. So, you know, I want to share a small piece of what happened to me again, just to let people know that, you know, to maybe dispel some stereotypes and really let people know that this is happening. This is going on in our communities. This is happening to our young people. And, you know, this isn't something that, you know, has stopped or that has gone away. It's currently happening now. So I'll share a small part of how I ended up being sex trafficked. So I was about 18 years old. I graduated Garfield High School in Seattle, from Garfield High School, go Bulldogs. 2 days after graduation, I decided to jump on a Greyhound back to Wyoming, back to my reservation, because I miss my people, miss my community, missed all my favorite cousins. Got to Wyoming, you know, so that was like springtime. I got a job. I was waitressing in Riverton, Wyoming, at the border town of my reservation. I was living with my mom. Some stuff happened, and like I ended up like taking off from me and my mom got in a fight or something. So I ended up like couch surfing. I was 18 years old. I was like couch surfing. I was just doing whatever I kind of wanted, vibing it out, you know, being 18, didn't know what I want. And I ended up getting, like, one night I got drunk and I ended up getting raped by one of my good friend's stepdad. And after this, that was the first time I ever been raped. So after this experience, you know, I ended up being gaslit or gaslighted by my community. People were calling me a homewrecker, a whore, a housewife. You know, I would maybe show up places and people would say that to my face. Oh, you're a whore, you're a hoe, you're this, you're that. So I was in a position of being 18 and believing what people were telling me, believing that I deserved to be raped, believing that, or, you know, believing that it wasn't even rape, and rape never even came to my mind because people were making me feel like that was my fault. I was being victim blamed, right? Because I had gotten drunk, I was responsible for what had happened to me. Because I was drinking, it was my fault that I got raped by, it's my fault at 18 years old that a 33-year-old man raped me, right? Anyways, so, you know, now I'm in a position of now being like 18, really low self-esteem, going through depression. You know, I was going to the bars, you know, I got a fake ID and started going to the bars so I could go get drunk at the bars because I didn't know how to handle what was going on in my life. I didn't even know that, okay, there's domestic violence, sexual assault programs near there wasn't one on my reservation at that time, but Fremont County Alliance in Riverton, Wyoming is a resource where people, if you're living near the Wind River Reservation and you're going through these experiences, there's advocates, there's people who you could reach out to. I didn't know that, 18 years old. Nobody told me that. That's not something I grew up like, oh, these are resources. I was so ashamed of what had happened to me. I didn't even think to reach out to nobody. The first thing I'm reaching out to is a bottle of alcohol because that's how I'm dealing with stuff. You know what I mean? So one day I you know, probably got off from work or something and I wanted to go get drunk. So I went to the border town of my reservation. There was a white man. He was about 33 years old. He was a bouncer at the bar. He looks at my ID. And I know that he knows I was 18. Like he puts a little smile on, lets me in. And from there, he groomed and manipulated me for about 2 months. He pretended to be my boyfriend. We were in some sort of relationship. And he, you know, started grooming me for the idea of making money. Maybe like 2 months after I met him, you know, he would keep me drunk. I was staying with him. Maybe 2 months after I met him, he groomed another 18-year-old girl from the town. And one of the first red flags that I saw, he said, in the next couple of weeks, I have a friend in Billings, Montana, who's going to hook us up with a job because we need money, blah, blah, blah. And you two girls, you don't got to do no sex acts. All you have to do is dress in a bikini and give men massages. And I was just like, you know, immediately I was like, this doesn't sound right. This is not good. But he was, you know what I mean? 18 years old, not knowing any better. And, you know, he was very, you know, persuasive in the terms of like playing my boyfriend and like, come on, baby, you know, we need money, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, looking back on it, you know, now that I'm 32, looking back on that time in my life, I'm like thinking to myself, like how naive I was, how, you know, truly innocent I was. I was just a little girl at 18 years old. So I literally I used to blame myself for that, but I don't blame myself for that no more because I was a little girl. But anyways, so, you know, that was the first red flag. He was like, you don't got to do no sex acts. You're just going to be in your bikinis giving massages. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe, I don't know. And he just continually pressed this idea, continually kept me drunk. And probably about 2 months after I had met him, I had turned 19 at this point, and that was like the beginning of summer, 3 months maybe after I met him. I got drunk. He got me drunk one night, and I woke up and I was in the backseat of his car. I asked him where we were going. He said we were going to Billings, Montana to make some money. And we got to Billings, Montana. We went to a library. He brought me in the library with him, which, you know, I mean, I think I was like trying to stay in the car too. He wanted me to come inside. I don't know why. We went to the public library in Billings. We sat at a computer, and he then created a Backpage.com account. We left the library. We went to somebody's house. He took pictures of me. uploaded them, and for the next 3 months after that, I was sold for sex on Backpage.com between Billings, Montana, and Spokane, Washington. During that time, like I was trying to go home. Maybe I would sober up, and I, would maybe like ask him to use a phone to try to call my mom, or or I would be drunk or something, and he would let me use the phone, and I would call home, and people are like, "Where are you? What are you doing? We haven't seen you. Your mom's freaking out." Maybe I'll call my mom, and my mom, I'd be like, "It's okay, don't freak out. I'm safe. You know what I mean? You don't got to file a missing persons report." And I remember like conversations with my trafficker during that 3 months of like being trafficked. Now that like I'm 30, so like I said, I came out about this story last March. So for the last 12 years, I literally have not thought a single day about this story. I pushed this so far back deep into my memories, back, into the no memory zone in the back of my brain, that I literally don't even remember my trafficker's name, which is the crazy part to me. Like, now that I'm letting this part of my past come back to me, now that I'm sitting here trying to remember, because this whole time I'm not trying to remember none of that. I'm not trying to think about none of that. I'm not trying to think about nothing that happened. And there's like, I'm not a clinical anything, but I work with, mental health therapists. There's a word for that. I want to say it's like disassociation. Like when you're experiencing trauma, your spirit leaves your body, your mind, you're there physically, but your brain, you're officially checked out, right? That's what a lot of the experiences that I had while I was being trafficked, I was completely checked out. You know what I mean? I remember certain parts, certain things here and there, but a lot of that 3 months, like, it's crazy to me how hard a lot of that is to remember. So now I'm choosing to be a survivor. I'm choosing to come public as a survivor. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, so now I'm trying to remember parts of this story. And it's crazy to me that I can't even remember this dude's name. And we were like that really blows my mind. I'm sure maybe at one point, who knows, with therapy and all these things, I'm sure all these memories are going to flood back to me, because just like any survivor knows, you can get triggered any moment and things come to you in just weird ways like that. You know what I mean? But anyways, I forgot where I was going with that. But anyways, so like after 3 months of being trafficked, luckily my pimp, and at this time didn't know this was a pimp, right? I'm sitting here thinking that this is my boyfriend. This dude loves me. This dude calls me beautiful. He buys me things. He keeps me drunk. So this is my boyfriend. No, I know now that this is my pimp. This is my trafficker. So thankfully he had a girlfriend in Vegas that was pregnant, and he let us know it's time to pack up. I got to go back to Vegas. My girl's about to give birth. So we packed up. He took me back to my reservation, dropped me off in front of my Indian casino, and I never saw him again. And like I said, I've been telling this story, choosing to come public, taking the steps that I need to take to heal, taking the steps that I need to take to be kind to myself, be generous to myself, love myself, because this isn't easy. This isn't easy sitting here in front of you and, telling you my deepest, darkest part of my past. This is probably the biggest, hugest skeleton I have in my closet, right? So I think, so the biggest parts I really want that stick out to me as I'm on this healing journey, as I'm trying to remember this story, as I'm trying to piece together all these pieces, right? The work that I do in the urban Native community in Seattle, right? And my experiences of being a survivor, I'm trying to piece these together. I'm trying to figure out where these stories work and how I can integrate what I went through into the work that I do. The more I get tripped out, like, it's crazy. It's crazy to me, the sick, patriarchal, colonized, like Trump era world we live in, where Indigenous women are not only dehumanized, not even viewed as like human beings in our country, but that this is the type of world we live in, that Indigenous women are preyed upon. We are preyed upon from the moment we leave our mother's womb for trafficking. And that's since contact with Columbus. Columbus came here, and the first thing he wanted to do was traffic our women, right? So after 12 years, I'm trying to, as a young woman now, I'm still not that old. I'm still, I'm 31 now. I'm still figuring it out that this was not my fault. You know what I mean? This is the type of world we live in. And if I don't talk about it, if I don't choose to heal, to break this, to break this cycle, that's going to be my niece. That's going to be my little cousins. That's going to be somebody else in the Seattle area. That's going to be somebody else. And you know what? I'll take one for the team. I'll start talking about it. I'll start using my voice. I'll start whatever I got to do, make those social media posts, whatever I need to do. I'll do that, because that's what I went through. Was horrible. And I want human trafficking to end in Indian country. It can end. I mean, that'd be nice if it ended across Turtle Island, but even more specifically for my native people, my indigenous people. If me sitting here in front of you on a webinar talking about what I went through is going to help in some sort of way, then I'll do this once a week. You know what I mean? I'll do this however often I need to. I'll continue to retell this story until something changes, until laws change, people, our mindset, how we view survivors and how we treat each other as human beings in this country changes. But like I said, now that I'm choosing to heal from it, now that I'm thinking about this story and I'm piecing together these pieces, the major things that stand out to me in the story as an adult, which I of course didn't even, I was busy experiencing the trauma back then. Now that I'm having a chance to heal, the things that stand out in the story is my trafficker. This is what my trafficker told me. My trafficker told me, because he's from Vegas. I think I don't know where he was born, but he was a pimp in Vegas. Another pimp in Vegas came up and told him, hey, if you go to the Plains Nations, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, the Indian girls there are easy to traffic. Not only are they easy to traffic, they're hot tickets to sell on Backpage.com. You label them as exotic, and you label them as Native American, they will sell like hotcakes. And that's what I was labeled as. When we were making that Backpage.com account, I was labeled as exotic and as Native American. So this is information that was given to him. So if you go there, they're easy targets because they're already vulnerable, right? And I really don't like using that word vulnerable, but I guess in the context of when you're thinking about a population of people that's been dehumanized, that nobody cares about, you know what I mean? That the government, the US federal government has no protections in place, has no true intentions of protecting indigenous peoples. And we've been knowing that since Columbus too. The US government has never had no intentions of protecting us, taking care of us, holding their promises in our treaties. When we were making our treaty process, the US federal government has never had no intentions like that, regardless. So there's already that concept of Native Americans are easy targets, they're invisible, they're nobody, you know what I mean? This is a population that nobody truly cares about. So if you go to the reservations, you can find these young Indian girls. They're easy targets. They're easy prey for predators. He was literally told there is loopholes in the laws. There's loopholes in the law. So even if you did get caught trafficking young native girls, they're not going to prosecute you. You know why? Because there's laws on the reservations that say that if you are not a tribal member, you will not be prosecuted for these types of crimes. So even if you get caught, they ain't going to do nothing. They're going to let you go. You ain't going to serve no time. Of course, that's a perfect melting pot for a predator right there. You get all these things lined up. Of course, he's leaving Las Vegas. He's jumping in his car and he's driving to the border town of my reservation. So a pimp from Vegas was told this information. Loopholes in the laws. These Indian girls are easy targets. Even if you get caught, you will not get persecuted. And that was enough for him to be like, yep. He jumped in his car. He drove up to Wyoming. He got a job as a bouncer at a bar so he could specifically prey on young Indian girls like me that were coming to the bar and drinking themselves to blackout drunk, or that were trying to get into a bar with a fake ID. So when we think about predators out there who are specifically coming to our reservation, that I feel like that's a lot of myth miss also, like when we're thinking about violence against Indigenous women, we already know. I don't have statistics in front of me. I'm not completely prepared, but there's like urban Indian health institutes and sovereign bodies institutes. They did a report of missing and murdered Indigenous women, and we know in there they had stats in there talking about how majority of perpetrators are non-native. So we already know that majority of these specific types of crimes that are perpetuated against us, young Native women or Indigenous women, are by non-Native men, like my pimp, like my trafficker, who heard this information, jumped in his car to drive, 1,000 miles to come prey on young women like me. So those are the things that stand out to me in my story that I'm now uncovering in the story, now that I'm sitting here, like I said, letting the story come back to me, thinking about these conversations that I had with my trafficker, thinking about the things that he told me. Another thing that stands out to my mind is what he told me. We were sitting there in Billings one night and he was on his phone, or he was talking to somebody. He got off his phone. He's like, hey, after this, I'm going to go change our Backpage account. I'm going to change it to, I can't remember the name of the town, North Dakota, but somewhere up in North Dakota, there's 2 or 3 man camps up there. And I think you girls would really sell good up there. So after this, we're going to go to the library and we're going to go, we might be going to North Dakota in a couple of days. And, at that time, I didn't think nothing of it. I was just like, okay, whatever. Where's the drinks? I'm just, being drunk or whatever, not knowing anything. But now I'm sitting here thinking, and I remember that one specific conversation with my trafficker when I was 19 years old. And I'm like, oh my God, what if I got taken to these man camps in North Dakota? Like that really trips me out. It gets my heart pumping. Like, it really scares me to think that not only did I survive this experience, to think of what could have happened to me. I could be on one of these posters out here. Somebody would be having a visual memorial in my name. So that really gets me emotional. Like, it really trips me out. Like, I wasn't planning on getting emotional, but now here I am. But when I'm thinking back on my story and what had happened to me, like, those are some of the things that stand out to me, that trip me out. And like, it really empowers me to keep doing this, keep talking about it, keep trying to make these connections, because we know this is happening. We know and I don't even really like the word epidemic either, because I feel like epidemic is associated with like a virus or a disease or something that's medical. Like, I don't know the true definition. But I label this as a crisis. The U.S. federal government isn't labeling that. Our states aren't labeling it as a crisis, but to me, and from my perspective, violence against Indigenous women, the sex trafficking of our young Indigenous people is a crisis to me. And everything that we do collectively in Indian country, whether you're mental health counselor, your substance use, whether you're just somebody who's on the red road right now, coming into 30 days of sobriety, you are breaking the cycle. You are making that change. Whether you're just now learning your language, whether you're just now learning how to bead, you're just now going on canoe journey for the first time, just now, finding your real parent, whatever journey that you're on, that is, to me, that's a collective that's healing Indian country. That's really creating that change, to break all these cycles of all these things that we've experienced. So I was trafficked for 3 months. He let us know his woman was pregnant in Vegas. He took me back home. Never seen him again. After that experience, I was like, yeah, I don't want to be sold for, I do not want to sell my body for money. I do not want to be sex trafficked. I don't want to go through that again. That was not fun. So I decided to look for a job. I got a job and I continued to carry on in my life as if nothing happened. I did not think of that. I just let that go, and I continued to move on forward in my life as normal. People knew that, and people know back home, like in our communities, people know what's going on. People will be, when we're thinking about all these 18, 19, 20-year-old girls that are going missing, these missing persons posters that are popping up everywhere. they're like, oh, we last saw her with so and so, or we already know that she's been on meth, so she's probably, you know what I mean? It's all interconnected for me. And match that with like lack of resources, lack of housing, lack of access to recovery and sobriety. It's just a hotbed for a continuance of this cycle when we're talking about violence against Native women. So when I think back on that, I continued on with my life like nothing had happened. I had been like waitressing for like 5 years, got into a relationship, started school. And then about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I got my first step into the social work world. Someone sent me a thing for a youth advocate at Labatia Youth Home. And Labatia Youth Home is a 25-bed co-ed transitional housing for Native youth ages 18 to 24. Shout out Labatia. And I got hired there, and I was about like 26. I wasn't much older than them. And that really changed my life, like just working there. And I still work there, you know, for the last 6 years. You know, just those connections to the community, helping empower other youth. You know, that's healing for me. So that was like my first step into the social work world. I eventually, about 2 years after that, I got hired at Cowlitz Tribal Health Clinic in Tukwila, Washington, for like a childcare. And then like a year, like maybe 9 months after working there, a program coordinator position within Pathways to Healing program opened up. I applied, I interviewed, I got that position. And when I got that position, like I was all like, I didn't really think too hard about it. I was just like, okay, this is an amazing opportunity. This is pretty cool. I'm starting to learn some stuff. I had no idea the journey that it would take me on. So I've been with Pathways to Healing for 4 years now. I just, it blows my mind the journey that I've been on for the internal healing for myself. You know, and now here I am coming full circle. For me, I'm coming full circle. Maybe not complete full circle, but I'm darn near full circle in the context of looking back on my young life, looking back on what I've experienced, what I've gone through, and how I'm able to sit here in front of you today as a young, you know, Indigenous woman who's doing her best to heal, to break these cycles, to use my voice. I know my gift, the creator is using my voice. You know what I mean? I know through prayer and through ceremony that this is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm not going to fight it. You know what I mean? I'm going to do my best I can to use my voice in a good way. You know what I mean? To not only uplift, but empower, you know, other young Indigenous women. So I think back, you know, I had no idea that the journey that being part of Pathways to Healing would put me on, the effect that this would have on me. And it feels good. It feels good to be somewhere out the dark, you know, when I first came out about the sex trafficking last March, man, I had a hell of a time. That it like hit me in my face like a frying pan. I thought I would be okay. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to roll in therapy. You know, I have this amazing group of support. I have amazing support systems. I have an amazing mother, a partner. I have the Survivors Leadership Council. You know, I'm going to do therapy. Woo. Oh man, when I tell you, like, I'm telling you, like, it was like a frying pan hitting me in my face and planting me straight on my ass, you know, uncovering this story, coming out. You know, I hadn't even gone public with it yet, like on a webinar. It was just me literally like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to own this. I'm going to start thinking about this. And I'm going to choose to heal, and I'm going to choose to talk about this. And just that, like that was hard. But I feel like I'm coming out the dark here. Some 2020, holy cow. That was trash. You know what I mean? Like it sucked so bad, just like COVID and working from home. And now I'm like being triggered by that past experience of being trafficked. And I feel like I'm coming out the dark. I'm coming over this hump now, and in this process of healing. It was really, really hard in the beginning. But like I said, thankfully with the love and care and support of my beloved community, the urban Native community in Seattle, my family, my partner, the Sovereign Bodies Institute, Anita, just, people around me, I'm able to continue on this journey and feel like, okay, I made it out I made it out the dark side a little bit. I made it out some of those thick bushes, and now I'm feeling better about this. I'm feeling more confident about this story, about being why I'm here. What's the purpose of me telling this story? And within that, I love art. I'm not the best artist. I love art. I've always, art is everything to Indigenous peoples, and especially specifically Plains natives, right? So Arapaho women, we had age grade societies, and those societies were basically based off art, quill work, bead work, how well you could decorate our pipe bags, our teepees, our cradle boards, and your wealth is what you gave away. So what you created, how much you create, and how much you give away. That's how we, as Indigenous people, show our wealth. And so through bad beadwork or for lack thereof of my beadwork, because I've tried to pick up beading, I try to pick up painting and quill work and all these things, and I'm just, it really requires a lot of patience. So shout out to beaders and quill workers and artists, because I'm not quite there yet with it yet. But one thing that has always come crazy, stupid easy to me is writing. I love reading. I love poetry. One of my most favorite things to write about is Indigenous love and healthy relationships. So I've always been writing before I've gotten on this healing journey. And one of the major things that has helped me on this healing journey has been poetry and writing. And I never really had plans on sharing that either. I've only recently on webinars and at work have started doing live readings of my poetry, and it's pretty empowering too. Like things that I've written down, that I've experienced through my trauma, that I've put on paper, that I've always thought was maybe just for me or just something that was helping me along the way, is now like, it feels good to know that something I've created is now coming to fruition in the context of healing and bridging the healing work and the work that I do in the community. Within the last year, I've written like maybe 3 or 4 poems specifically about my trauma that I've experienced being a survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, and sex trafficking. And I only have one poem that I wrote about my sex trafficking that I'll share with you guys today. If you saw my last webinar, you might have already heard it, but I'll share it with you just because, like I said, I wrote this maybe like a month after I came out about being a survivor of sex trafficking. And yeah, I'll share it with you guys. So I titled it "A Letter to Myself." Because I was feeling really bad. Like, it's when you're, as a survivor, you just have your everybody knows as a survivor, any sort of like really trauma, but even more specifically, I guess, like as a survivor of DVSA, sex trafficking, like you're just having your days where you hate yourself. You did not feel confident. You doubt yourself. You think that this was your fault, that you had a choice. And more specifically, the biggest thing that I've had to really tell myself is like, stop thinking that you had a choice. I really truly believe for like 12 years that this was my fault. I had a choice. My mama and my grandmama taught me. They taught me right from wrong, and I knew better. I knew I had those red flags. When he was telling me that we were going to go get massages in our bikinis, when that first red flag popped off in my head, that was me telling myself that you knew right from wrong. You knew what you were getting into, and you made that choice to sell yourself for sex or sell yourself for money. But now I know, doing the work, learning, doing the work in the community, doing work for, learning and educating myself, I can look back and be like, Chelsea, you did not have a choice. You were groomed and manipulated. Stop hating yourself. So I have to literally like talk myself out of some, like when I'm triggered, I'll have my good days and bad days. So I wrote myself, and it's a poem, but I said I titled it "A Letter to Myself" because I know this is not going to be the last time I'm writing about this. This is gonna be a ongoing letter to myself that I'm gonna continue to write to myself. But I'll share it with you guys now. So, a letter to myself. And I forgot to bring the paper, so I have to read it off my screen. So, letter to myself. You have everything it takes to heal yourself. The Creator has given you all the tools you need. You. The truth has set you free, and now you have no excuse not to heal yourself. You do not need to stay numb. You can heal yourself. You can do this, sister. You did not ask or want to be sex trafficked. You were preyed upon and targeted for the Arapaho and Chupich blood that runs through you. You were never vulnerable. A government that was built to enslave, sell, and profit from your brown body, you did not stand a chance, but you survived. An institutionalized system set in place to ensure this monopoly continues. My land, my people did not stand a chance, but we survived and we are still here. You are medicine, Nachase Hise, sweet sage woman. You are beautiful. You are beautiful. You come from bloodlines of women with skin-stitched chins and pure septums that signify their beauty and identity. You are worthy of love, acceptance, and your past does not define you. You do not have to be ashamed that you live in a sick, patriarchal, colonized world where 99.9% of your Johns were white men. Chelsea, I believe in you. Chelsea, I forgive you. Chelsea, it was not your fault. Chelsea, your existence is ceremony. Chelsea, pray to the old man for healing. Look to your ancestors for guidance and never give up. Chelsea, I love you. Biha thethin, bani ken kum ken. And that was a poem that I wrote to myself about my sex trafficking experience. Like I said, using poetry. So we already know as Indigenous peoples, oral storytelling has been our most traditional form of sharing and art. Also, when we think about quill work and beadwork, oral storytelling is a very traditional form also. And that's just something I'm coming into, that I vibe with, that I connect with, that helps me heal. That I'm able to take these thoughts and all these things that are going on in my head and kind of put it onto paper. I don't really like to label myself as a storyteller, but I guess that's technically what I'm doing when I'm telling like when I first got hired at Pathways, I would tell the story of my auntie Geraldine Hendrickson. She was murdered in downtown Seattle 22 years ago. So I tell her story. So when we think about storytellers, we always think about stories as a form of education, right? And sometimes I'm telling like really hard stories. Like I don't have a whole lot of I got some good stories, but I guess in the work that I do, I'm taking these really hard stories of my experiences, my family's experiences, and I'm using it to educate, to inform legislation and public policy in and around Seattle. So I tell different stories, right? I tell some of my family stories, and now I'm choosing to tell my story. And that feels good. It feels empowering. It feels like I'm making a change, not only in my life, but in my community. And that's the tool that I've been using for now. That's what's been helping me. And I love Pathways to Healing. I love working for Pathways to Healing. My supervisor, Debbie Hassler, she's a Cowlitz tribal member and former councilwoman. I really look up to her as a mentor in my life. And I'm so thankful for her in the context of putting me in this position, giving me the creative freedom to do the poetry, to do the storytelling, to create MMIW workshops and go into schools and around Seattle to share this information. And most recently, we started a Pathways to Healing book club, and now I have to read this book called Trauma Stewardship. And I'm like 10 pages in here. What am I? Yeah, I'm like 10 pages in and I'm already blown away. I'm like, why have I not read this 10 years ago? I'm already like so excited to finish this book right here. It's an everyday guide to caring for self while caring for others. And I think that's what I had a lot of problem on, like finding that balance while I'm putting myself on the line, while I'm telling these stories, while I'm having these raw conversations and sharing real raw poetry and stuff that's happened to me in my life, or really those skeletons in my closet. I was really having a hard time finding that self-care balance. What does that look like? And you know what I mean? That's something, a balance that we all gotta find in our lives. But I'm at the point within my healing journey that I do not feel bad about self-care no more. If I need to take a break, I'm taking a break. I mean, outside of, work hours is work. You know what I mean? I do my work on the clock, but outside of that, in my home life, my family life, whatever, if I need to take a break, I'm taking a break. If I need to go for a drive, go out to the mountains real quick, I'm going out to the mountains. That's my number 2 favorite form of self-care outside of writing, is going home to my reservation in Wyoming, being in our mountain range, being back home. So if I need to go to Wyoming, go drive 18 hours to go to Wyoming to be in my mountains real quick, or you know what I mean? I'm gonna do what I need to do for myself because I deserve it. You know what I mean? And I'm at that point of, it's all about self-love. You have to love yourself. If we're doing this sort of work, coming on this council, that's part of this journey that I've been on, because I haven't always done self-love. This is self-love is maybe something since maybe I turned 30 years old, about to be 30. So maybe in the last 2 years, I just now fell in love with myself. I liked myself. I thought I was cool, whatever. Within the last 2 years, I fell in love with Chelsea. So being on that journey of self-love, taking care of yourself, self-care, healing, I encourage everyone to do it. So that's how I'm staying steady. That's how I'm staying balanced. That's how I'm able to, work through this trauma. I'm nothing without my family, my tribe, my community, my elders, without the support systems, I wasn't able to have this kind of self-love on my own. But I won't keep you guys here all day. So that's a little bit about who I am, where I came from, or where I come from, my story, what I do in my healing journey. And I want to keep you guys here all day. So I know we got maybe some questions potentially, but I thank you guys all for sitting here listening to me ramble on. Hey, Michaela.
Hey there. So I just have to say you are one of my favorite people. Like the way you can just share your story, and like I can hardly even keep up with the comments on Facebook because there's just been so many people saying like, thank you for that validation. Like this happened to me, this happened to my siblings. So just really appreciate how honest you're being. And gosh, that poem brought me to tears. It was just beautiful. So thank you.
Haho.
Yes, absolutely. So we did have a question. So someone asked, how can we as individuals get involved in helping Indigenous women in the movement of ending human trafficking and spreading awareness?
Ooh, that's a complicated question. I can sit here and answer that for about 20 minutes, but I won't. I say the quickest way you can, if you're not involved and you want to help, the quickest way is to educate yourself. Get educated. Go to Urban Indian Health Institute, Sovereign Bodies Institute. Download their reports that were just made. And matter of fact, I don't know if Sovereign Bodies collaborated on this one, but I had printed this out. I was on a flight. I'm in Ohio right now. But I printed this out because this just came out 2 days ago. This is the official report for the Wind River Indian Reservation in Wyoming of missing and murdered Indigenous women. It looks like it's about 40 pages here. I just had time to skim through. I wish I had been more prepared so I could pull some real significant stuff out of here. Print out these reports. Go to Sovereign Bodies Institute. Go to Urban Indian Health Institute. Print out these reports. These reports are very first of their kind, groundbreaking reports that are specific about violence against Indigenous women in Indian countries. So educate yourself. That's the most easiest way. And once you get educated, you could probably go from there. The number 2 thing I always tell people is put your money where your mouth is. And more specifically, non-native people, white folks, even more. I don't want to hear you talk about like sharing a post ain't doing nothing for me on Facebook. Putting a Black Lives Matter sign in your window ain't doing nothing for me. Put your money where your mouth is. Donate to Sovereign Bodies Institute. Donate to Urban Indian Health Institute. Chief Seattle Club. Labatia Youth Home. You know what I mean? My program, Pathways to Healing. You could donate to our program. That money goes directly to survivors, directly to the work that we do in the community. And I'll leave you with that. I could give 10 more minutes on this answer, but I won't. Those are the easiest things. Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So while we wait for a few more questions to come in, I've got a few prepared for you. So could you talk a little bit about why survivor leadership is so important and what does it look like?
Ooh, that's a good question. So as a survivor leader, if I don't see a face that looks like mine in leadership, I'm always going to believe what America wanted me to be. America, the foundation of America is for Indigenous peoples to be dehumanized through caricatures and mascots. And we're not real people. If we're not real people, you could steal our land, you could steal our woman, you could sell us for sex, you could do whatever you want to us if we're not even looked at as human beings. I'm sorry, I already lost track of that question. One more time, Michaela.
What is survivor leadership and
Okay.
why is it so important?
So if I'm sitting here as a young Native woman, I don't see Deb. Right now we live in 2020. Thank God we got Representative Deb Haaland. We got Seattle City Councilwoman Deborah Juarez. I got Abigail Echohawk leading Urban Indian Health Institute. I see Anita out here being CEO of, you know what I mean? If I don't see myself reflected in leadership, I'm going to sit here and believe what America wants me to be. I'm going to believe I'm a good for nothing Indian, that these stereotypes of being a drunk, an alcoholic, and being good for nothing but for sex, I'm going to believe that. So that's why it's so representation matters. Northern Arapaho dog face on a long board drinking cranberry juice while listening to Fleetwood Mac on TikTok, that matters. That matters. If you're seeing something outside of the myths and the stereotypes of us being drunks and all you hear the poverty porn, or like when New York Times or people come to do articles about our people, all they want to talk about is the poverty porn about we're drunks and we're this and murder, and you don't see yourself on TikTok, you don't see yourself in leadership. I don't see myself at the White House. I can never be that. You know what I mean? That's why it's so empowering to me coming into a job, Pathways to Healing, where there's a Native woman, Debbie Hassler, who's a councilwoman who's making that change. I could see myself in her. So if I could sit here as a survivor leader, even though it's not the greatest subject, right, of sex trafficking, and somebody sees another young Native girl sees that in me and say, hey, I'm worth more than that. I don't have to sell my body for money no more. I'm worth more than the hypersexualized image that America has made of me. Then that makes it worth it. And that's why it's important. Representation matters, period.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So the next question is, what is your advice for survivors who want to share their story, but they're scared that revealing too much could put them in danger?
I really encourage you to, if you think that that's what's going on with you, I really encourage you to not come out about that yet. There's different avenues, so many different avenues, right? When we're talking about getting advocacy, maybe finding an advocate, finding support sisters, reaching out to Sovereign Bodies Institute. You can reach out to me. The only reason why I don't feel that way right now is because of my specific experience. Like, I know I'm never going to see my trafficker again. It wasn't like direct ties to gangs and cartels. It was just like a lone poor pimp from Vegas who needed to make some quick cash. And he knew he was already seasoned in the game. He knew how to groom. He knew how to manipulate. He knew, it wasn't connected. So I'm able to not have that sort of fear, because now being older and being, knowing these things, being educated in this field, I could be like, I can make those connections that I know that I'm not in danger. I've already been like, okay, I've had to sit here and think about this hard. Like, okay, he wasn't connected to or cartels or drugs, so I'm able to sit here and tell my story in a safe way. I would encourage you to be mindful. If you feel like that, if there's red flags there, you think that you're putting yourself in danger because your pimp is still around, you're still maybe in the game. You know what I mean? There's lots of factors we know as survivors of sex trafficking that come with not only being in the game, but choosing to come forward publicly. And there's many ways to come forward publicly. You don't have to sit on a webinar like me and be like, come out and blurt it all out. You could be, if you want to tell your story, you want to, or try to use that some way, there's many ways to do that anonymously also. But I would encourage you to find a solid support system, reach out to maybe sovereign bodies. If you feel like as an Indigenous survivor, you have these questions, you really want to work it out and figure out why you might be in danger, do not come out publicly, and yeah, like reach out to people's support systems, maybe a advocate, a human trafficking advocate. If you need help finding those resources, reach out to us. Um, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. For anyone who's watching this that might be in a dangerous situation, we do have a support line. The number for that is posted in the chat here. So I really encourage you to reach out if you need to. So kind of a similar question, but what advice would you give to someone who suspects that a loved one might be in a dangerous situation? How can they approach that loved one?
Ooh, that's a really complicated question, because if someone's not ready, if someone is not ready to get out the life, ready to leave their abuser, ready to leave their trafficker, there's really not much you could do. I would highly, I mean, it's all situational. You know what I mean? It just really all depends on the situation. I would never approach, if I thought somebody was being trafficked, a young Native girl, I would probably never approach her and be like, hey, are you being trafficked? Hey, do you need help? Hey, is there something? No, it's all situational, and you don't want to risk somebody's safety any more than they're already in. So a lot of the times it's a waiting game, waiting for them to come to you, waiting for them to reach out, waiting, for things or situations to change, because being in the life, being in the game, being sex trafficked is very dangerous. It is not, even though we call it the game, right? It's not a game. This is real life stuff. Women are out here being murdered. Women are out here being killed because our lives aren't worth nothing when we're being trafficked for sex. So that's a really touchy thing to try to help somebody. But that's the amazingness of Sovereign Bodies Institute, right? You don't see a lot of people, a lot of organizations out there who are their mission. I mean, a huge part of their mission is to uplift Indigenous survivors of sex trafficking and provide resources, right? So right now, as we think of the game, when we're talking about changing the game or being game changers, when we're talking about sex trafficking in Indian country, Sovereign Bodies Institute is on the forefront of that. We're truly changing the narrative, truly changing what it looks like when we're dealing with survivors, when we're telling their stories, how we interact with them. So the best advice, I guess, yeah, would just, you know, be mindful about how you approach them. If you're trying to help, be mindful of their safety, of where they're at, whether they're trying to stay in the game, whether they're trying to get out. You know what I mean? What do they need? Always listen. Always listen. Don't assume that just because they're being sex trafficked means they want it to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they just need help with something. You know what I mean? You just try to be mindful, especially if you're not a survivor of that. Just be mindful of those things, of their safety, and being if you're trying to be supportive, to listen, to not just assume that they want to get out the game, or they assume things that they haven't told you yet.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah, I just think it's so important just to listen to survivors. You know, a lot of people ask what they can do, and that's always my first response is just listen and believe survivors. There's so many times when something happens to our people that they're automatically victim blamed, and you talked a lot to that. And so it's just even that simple act of just saying that I hear you, I see you, is really important and is kind of that first step in healing.
Yeah, that's the best thing. Some of the words when I first was coming out that people were telling me, Chelsea, I believe you. Chelsea, I see you. I hear you. Those are the best words that made me feel so empowered. You're right, Michaela.
Mhm. So yeah, with that, we're at the end of our questions. Do you have any kind of closing statements or anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
I just want to raise my hand, say thank you. Thank you to Michaela for putting this together, for being on the background, doing all the background amazing work of this whole month of Sovereign Bodies Institute's whole month of human trafficking awareness campaigns, whether it's webinars or stuff that we got like coming up in the future. I want to say thank you to you and Anita for pulling that together, doing the background work, for uplifting survivors' voices like mine, and to make sure that they're heard during the month of January. Want to say haho, thank you to everybody who tuned in today, to in the hopes that what you learned here today, the things that I talked about, that you're able to take that home in a good way, and use that in the work that you do, or in the community that you live in. And that's all I got. I got nothing but love and peace for all my relations out there. Thank
Beautiful.
you. Haho.
Yes, thank you. So like we said, we're doing events like this all month. So next Wednesday at 5:30, we'll be having another Meet the Survivors storytelling and Q&A session. And then we also will be having a webinar next Friday at 5:30 Pacific time titled Reimagining Services for Trafficking Survivors. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time.